We're really fortunate to have these next two presenters. Our next presentation features Hall of Famer John Smoltz and Chris Verna, founder of Chris Verna Training, and they'll be speaking on a very important topic, the path to a healthy shoulder and elbow for throwers. Please give a warm welcome for John Smoltz and Chris Verna.
What we're trying to do is give you a different perspective. I started out as a trainer in minor league baseball in 1988 with the Chamblee Mariners. And I went through 3 years of trying to figure out why guys were getting hurt. And I said, you know, there's something's got to be here that we're missing. So I met with a therapist named in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And he said, what do you think about the problems in baseball throwing with the arm not going back, with the arm coming forward? I said, you know, that's absolutely right. So I said, where do we get the research and do that? He goes, well, no one's ever done a study like that. So I'm going to have John, I'm going to show you what we did. I took everybody in spring training, and I just did a quick measurement on them, and I did a health history on them. And I found out that I would, slide this way, that the pitchers and the players were a little bit different. So I segmented out all the pitchers. And all I did, slide to your left, was take their arm like this and drop it forward. And as soon as their shoulder started to pop up, I stopped. So I would take this measurement here. Then I would go back like this and take this measurement. For those on the other side, what I did was I come forward like this. That's where it pops up, and I go back where it pushes down. So I did that, took that measurement, and then I asked them if they had any back problems, shoulder problems, elbow problems. We found out that they were 4 times more likely to have a shoulder problem if they had a back problem. And not having any idea what to do with the back, I just took the concept of the shoulder, which is I want this to move circularly or rotationally in the joint. So I did the same thing for the hip joint. And I started to realize that there might be a relationship. So when I met with a neurosurgeon, I started explaining to him what I was doing. And I went ahead, tested his shoulder, went down, stretched his lower body, went back up to his shoulder, and his shoulder was already flexible. I hadn't done anything to his shoulder yet. So I started looking to see what that was like. So I found out that all the shoulder stuff I was doing wasn't working because I wasn't working with the hips first. So I go to a conference. You have Dr. Andrews is head physical therapist there. I get up, I ask him a question. I said, look, I'm the one who coined the term sleeper stretch. I said, I'm using the sleeper stretch a little differently now. I'm not using it to stretch as much as I'm to evaluate. I said, I think the problem's in the lower body. He said, no, they're not. He said, you should go back to my research 2 years ago. He goes, there's no relationship. I said, well, I think there is. Went home. I'm from Boca Raton. I live in Boca Raton, Florida. And I went to Lynn University, then I went to FAU University, and I went and tested the guys out. I measured the shoulders like we did. I came down here, I unlocked their hips, and I went back up and rechecked the shoulder. And I found that they increased the range of motion of the shoulder, that's all I did, by 50% of internal rotation. Now everybody said to me, the big criticism when I was in Seattle was, so if you do that, you're going to increase the external rotation. Not true at all. I found that they remained the same within 1 degree of their external rotation. So what something like that looks like. So the thing is when I started working with John, he already had a labrum tear. So we had to figure out how is he going to continue to play at 24, go on in full career, but have a labrum problem. And I figured out it was actually coming from his hips. He had really bad hips. Not great right now, but pretty good. So I'm going to test 2 of the guys out. So last year when I did this, I tested John out, and everybody goes, wow, that's a Hall of Fame pitcher. You know, I would work on him. So I'm going to have a college player come up too. So just remember, it's right about here. Slide to your left. Good. So now I come down here, and I'm not asking you guys to do this. Last time I did this, everybody say, how do you do that? You know, can I do that? I'm not doing it for that purpose. I'm doing it just to show you that if your program doesn't have a hip program involved, you're probably going to have more shoulder problems. And if it does have a good hip program, you're probably going to dramatically decrease your shoulder problems. John's been waiting me to do this since yesterday. And it does work for him now for his golf game, too.
Yes, it does.
It does not help his putting. And you see, it just drops right down. The biggest thing is the tension in the shoulder. For those of you who can see it on that side, it just drops right down. The tension in the shoulder releases. When that tension releases, then the shoulder can get stronger. If your shoulder's protecting it all, it's not going to get as strong as you would. I don't care what exercise you're doing. When you start to pitch and it starts to protect, it's gonna decrease in its strength. So if you want to increase the strength of the shoulder while doing the exercise, you have to make sure the lower body's good. Good job. And this one may show. This may show a little bit better. It's right there. The other thing I found in my study was that if you were less than 25 degrees of internal rotation, you were going to get hurt. And what I did was I took all the numbers. I did it when we did evaluations in the spring training before everything started. And was able to then have all the numbers with me, kept them in my back pocket. After every player that got hurt or was having a problem came in, I would check the numbers on them and I'd see. And that's how I came up with the 25 degrees. And now, you see, he just drops all the way down. And he just drops all the way down. So that's at least 50% increase. So it's really important that we look at both the hips and the shoulder. Okay, thanks, buddy. Good job. I'm going to leave you over there later. Okay? So now, what are you going to do? You know, when you go back, how are you going to evaluate your own players? The number one thing you got to understand. Come back over here, John. I want you to do the sleeper stretch. The number one thing you have to remember is that if you evaluate every day, your players will get better. When we brought this program to the Phillies, the biggest thing we found out was that they kept evaluating the players on a periodic basis. Everybody at least did something to improve themselves. They wind up eliminating all the surgeries in the organization. They reduced their workman's comp by 80%. So if you understand anything, it's important that it's on a daily basis. Okay, so what I use, the sleeper stretch. So if you look, if you have a player, I'll try to stand behind John here. If they come right to here, they need to be doing some work. You need to be looking at their hips. You need to be working them hard. If they get down into here, this is a good starting position. This person needs to work at it to keep it here. If the arm goes all the way down, if it gets down in here, that person generally does not have a problem with their internal rotation and almost never will. They need to focus on strengthening their arms. So understand that. Okay, so go ahead and sit up on the table. So now we gotta look at the hips. How do we evaluate the hips real quick? So as you're sitting in your chairs, if you just go ahead and put your right leg on top of your other knee and see, you can see how many people drop their knee down. So go ahead and put it. So if you see, if your knee is down, that's good. So we know that's a pretty good hip. Switch legs. But when we get here, you see, we got a problem on the left side. And being a right-handed pitcher landing on his left side, he had a problem. This is the knee, yeah.
No, I had
That one. This knee, when he was playing, was a big problem. We had to get this left hip. Once we got the left hip to work, right, his shoulder got stronger and he was able to actually keep his arm. Now, understand, the rotator cuff is 4 or 5 muscles. If I don't know if you could just turn a little bit this way. If you just take your hand and put it right here like this, sorry, do it this way. Take your hand like this. I'll do it this way. Do it this way. There we go, so everyone can see this. What you basically have are 3 muscles in the back, 1 muscle in the top, and 1 muscle in the front. It's this muscle in the middle that we have all the problems with. That's a supraspinatus. When most people tear their rotator cuff, it's this muscle. This is the muscle that we have to focus on. So when you're going down to when you're doing internal rotation, like this, as you come forward, that supraspinatus muscle on top, just one hand, that's what's going to cause your impingement. It's going to get torn. It's going to cause the bone to become enlarged, and you have to come in and whack everything off. And this is the first thing that goes with the shoulder. So what did we do? We went ahead and we strengthened the back. But we never really worked on the front. And we never really worked on the supraspinatus the right way. So we're going to go over some of those things with you today on how to get that right. So after you're evaluated, say, okay, we got a hip problem or something, we're going to start working on that. The next thing we look at is the mechanics. And when I used to come see John, I'd say, hey, John, here's the next guy I think is going to get hurt. And I'd say, this is the next guy to get hurt. So one day I came in and I said, I think Steve Avery's going to get hurt in 4 years. He goes, what? I said, yeah, I think it's going to take 4 years. Well, one day I walk in, he looks at me, and I forgot I even said it. He goes, I can't believe that. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, I can't believe Steve Avery got hurt after 4 years. I said, there's a steady progression, and there's things you can look for. And there's things that I look for when there is. So the first thing we want to do, I'm going to have John demonstrate this. We're going to use this line right here as the mound. So if the mound goes from this line here forward, you see a lot of guys wanting to put just their toe on the rubber. Right-handed pitcher. So he just puts his toe on the rubber. That's the whole thing. Now this is the toe, right here, right there. This is the mound right here. Step back a little bit. Good. Going this way? Yeah, you're going that. You're throwing that way. All right. So they just kind of put the toe on the rubber. I know they have a hip problem right away because they're torquing their hip and they don't even know they're doing it. And what basically is happening is they're trying to open up. They're trying to do some other things to try to get them. But basically, that's coming from the hip. When I see the guy put their whole foot on the rubber, whole foot, all the way forward. You're right there, good. The whole foot on the rubber, then they're solid. They got everything. There's no tweaking here, and they're going to be much more stable when they come up. So it's a little thing, but it shows a lot if you understand how the body works through that. So the next thing I look at, and John, I think, made this famous. If we look at the W there on the left, I'm going to have John. So what I call that is 2 fingers out. So he brings his 2 fingers out and comes like this. So what has to happen, he's going to have to flip and come through with his elbow. I'm going to let John explain to you how he had to get over that.
Yeah, so everything with each pitcher is unique to their body, and what Chris is talking about, biomechanics, is huge too. You just create from the foundation up, you just start creating problems. So if your foundation is not real good, it's going to show its effect up here. I was very loose jointed, I was very flexible, and what I realized that when I went and started working with Chris, how tight I was in areas that I thought I was flexible. So everything that you see in the picture before is a natural, that was just I'm self-taught pitcher, you know, grew up in Lansing, Michigan. Never went to camps, never went to what exists today. And I just learned how to throw what was natural to me. And so similar to what I have is similar to what Steven Strasberg. It's the W or the inverted, however you want to, whatever your technology is. 9 anchors here, 6 anchors here makes it very difficult to do that again. So what I learned to do and changed in the middle part of my career was how to take the hand out of my glove, okay, and how to get it back into a position to give my shoulder the best chance for success for a long career. Because where I was going was something going to be on the surgery and the operating table sooner than I wanted to, okay? So what I learned to do is if this right here was a wall, since we don't have a wall, I would stand against the wall. Now, what you got to understand, if you're teaching a young child or if you've got an older pitcher, it takes a while to create and change a habit. So anything that you ask a player or pitcher to change mechanically, you're going to have to give them some time. You know, there's a rule of thumb that it's at least a month, 3 weeks to 4 weeks to change muscle memory, whether it's swinging a golf club or whether it's swinging a bat or throwing a baseball. So what I had to do was make a concerted effort in the off season and literally, without throwing a baseball, learn how to not hit the wall when I took the glove, my hand out of my glove. So I literally would hit the wall. If I stood my back against this wall right here, if I took my hand out of the glove, this is what I was doing. So as Chris was talking, the only way to do that is flip, and the timing, I was athletic and could adjust enough. So I had to stand against this wall with a glove and learn how to do this and replicate this over and over all off season. So now you notice when I take it out, I'm not hitting the wall. When I used to take it out, my first action was here. This is putting tremendous torque on my shoulder, but I was getting away with it because I was young and flexible and I could do it. So I would stand against a wall all off season. And then when I would learn how to just take it out with my leg up and get my hand out so that when I go down, I'm in the position I want to be in to throw. That took 3 months of training my brain and my body, of learning how to get the hand out, and then the balance and everything getting ready and being quiet in the front side. So that's what took from that picture. That's how you can change a mechanic without throwing a ball, by doing a dry drill, by training your mind how to come out of the glove.
So with that, if you look at the picture on the left, you see how when you flip, you come through with your elbow. So now what happens is you've got a situation where I look at whether you're pulling through or pushing. Obviously, when you get your elbow here, you got to push through and throw. So what we're trying to do is try to look and see how are you going to pull your body through, and how are we going to teach that. So I presented John with the rope, and I said, John, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? Can this? And when I started using it, I started realizing we can use this to pull through, and we can see whether guys are pushing it through. So I'm going to let John describe what he uses, how he likes that.
Yeah, I wish I would have had this when I was playing, because the thing that most popular, or at least the thing that you're familiar with, is a towel drill. When you're trying to warm up and you're trying to get your shoulder loose, and especially when I made the transition into the bullpen, you know, as a starter, you got all day to try to structure your routine. And so what many people would teach or show is put the towel drill in between your fingers, you simulate throwing, and you snap that towel. The problem is you're squeezing your fingers together, you're not holding something, and even though it may create that force or tension to get your shoulder going, it wasn't the same as holding a baseball, okay? And so by holding a baseball, I could get in this position, and I could literally get my arm up, throw without throwing a ball, but holding a ball, and I don't have to grip it super tight, and I can get this action where I'm getting through. Now, after doing about 10 to 15 of these, my shoulder feels lighter, it's better in position to throw a baseball, and I feel like all I've done is I'm getting loose and getting through with the same thing I told you about taking the ball out of my glove. What I love about this is this has 3 different ways of tension, 3 different ways, as Chris was talking about, to monitor what you're doing when you throw a baseball. When you feel this as a pitcher, there's nothing that simulates unless you release a baseball, and the more you throw a baseball, obviously, the more tension that's putting on all parts of your body. There's no at all feeling of throwing a baseball when you have this. This is by far, if I would have been, you'd have seen me in the bullpen using this 10 to 15 times, and then cutting down my throws to get ready to come in the game because I feel like my arm is accelerated. It has the same weight of a baseball when you have it in your hand, but the beauty of it is it doesn't load up until you get in this position, as Chris was talking about. You can't do this with it. You're going to get out and you're going to get down through, and that last whip gives you the simulation of throwing a baseball and getting down and following through. It's the best thing I've seen. I've seen a lot of things, obviously, in my days as playing baseball. And this thing right here will be one of the greatest in season an out-of-season training device because it just takes away when you release a baseball, obviously that tension and that effort and that force is coming somewhere. It has to go somewhere. With this, it all stays tight in, and you can tell by the way that you throw this baseball. You can throw different grips. You can certainly take one of these out, two of these out. It has, for a young child, certainly we would not recommend using all three of these because of the torque. But this right here is what would have gotten me to a point where, as a closer or getting ready for a game, cuts down the time. But it's it has a dual purpose. It's a great training device, is what I just showed you. Imagine getting right here and getting in a position where you're getting ready to get the hand out, and then you're getting in a position to throw and get to your left side. Pitching can be super complicated, or it can be pretty easy once you realize the fundamentals that you're trying to recreate.
So just to elaborate more on the difference between doing the towel and the rope, when you put the towel between your two fingers here and you pinch your fingers, you're pinching and using the top part of your arm. And you want to use the bottom side of your arm to be able to pull through. Well, it's really difficult to be able to pull through when your top side's contracting. And the other thing is you have different muscles in your hand than you do in your forearm. These are intrinsic, these are called extrinsic. And so when you grip a ball, these all are activated. You don't get that activation with the towel. And you're not getting this here. So you wind up having to slow down and not do the proper mechanics. And what we found, we had Coach Peavy baseball in Atlanta. I said, we need to do some research. Let's get some high-speed video. Let's see what this is like with some sensors and all that. So we did a test with just 3 individuals. And it was interesting. We found that with the towel, they dropped their elbow down. They put more load on their elbow, and they slowed down their arm speed. So with the rope, they were able to get their arm up higher and accelerate through with better feeling with the hand and the ball. So there's definitely a distinct difference between it. If there wasn't, I wouldn't even waste my time with the rope. But there's definitely a big difference. John and I would use this a lot, and we could never get the right mechanics that we wanted. So, and then with the rope, so it can be a training device, but Lynn University coach liked it so much, he says, you know what, I'm going to use this in my bullpen, and I'm actually going to test and see how many throws with the rope it takes to get the guy warm before he then goes on the mound. He said, so now I got a starter in the game. I see he's struggling a little bit. I know I can get my bullpen guy up. He needs 5 throws with the rope. I say, he's going to tell him, I want you to do the rope first. He gets him on the rope. If the guy recovers and is fine, he sits him down. If he doesn't, he goes to the mound and he brings him in. He said, I think I can reduce the number of times a guy gets dry humped in the bullpen. He said it's going to dramatically reduce the number of pitches and warm-up pitches they have to do. So this season, he's going to try to go through that. He'll know each player. He's already started the research with it. In the off-season, he actually used the guys having just to warm up. And he found that they do 30% less throws to warm up. But he said the throws that they were warming up with after the rope were much better. They were using their whole body. And they're pulling through using their whole body. So the whole body got warmed up much faster. You didn't have to make many throws. So that's why I really like the difference between the two. So now, we talked about dropping the elbow down. And so when we see the guy drop the elbow down, how do we combat that? And you have the Job exercises, and there's a bunch of different exercises. And I've been doing, it's almost 30 years now. And I never really remember what I talked about on top here, the supraspinatus muscle, to be right. The reason why the elbow is dropping is primarily this muscle and the back muscle. So if your internal rotation is bad, there's a chance your elbow has to go down to come through. If your internal rotation is good because you've been doing all the right things and you still have a problem with your elbow, that comes back to the supraspinatus muscle. So how do we combat that? So what I do is a little different exercise. The supraspinatus muscle works from here to here, and from here to here. It kind of doesn't work much in here. And remember, the rotator cuff muscles, what they do is they hold the shoulder in place while you extend. And they're on the inside, the muscles on the outside, they take you away from your body. So there's called a coupling effect. So the rotator cuff's trying to pull it in. You're trying to extend it out. So there's a fight there. So the problem is that if you're down here, these are going to be all jammed up. You got to be up here and it'd be fluid. The problem is this muscle may or may not like that because it's weakness. Now, when you see guys take the ball out of the glove and go straight down here and come up, I know they have a supraspinatus problem. Because remember what I said, right from here to here, supraspinatus works. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get that muscle to get their arm up. So if you want a guy to come back more gracefully in here and come through, they have to have a strong muscle. So the problem with it is I found it's not just that muscle in that part of the body. There is something that goes on with the whole body working that works with that muscle. So I'm going to have John, I'm going to try this and John's going to try this. So I'm going to show you it's not that easy an exercise. So you got to learn, you got to give yourself time. You want to get your arm in a 90-degree position and your palm away from you so you're almost in your 50-50. You're here like this. And I got this bottle. What I like about this is you just fill the water up how much resistance you want. If you fill it all the way up, I'm not sure how much it weighs, but you can increase the progression by how much water you put in it if you want to do it that way out, because a lot of times you're going to do these out on the field and stuff and not inside. If you're going to do it inside, I use a 5-pound weight. I do not go above a 7 or 8-pound weight. If you get too much weight on here, you're going to start working with the big muscles, and then the supraspinatus muscle is not going to work because it's this very small muscle. So basically, you're here, you step up, and as you come up, you go straight up like this. But the big thing is you come down and you stay at 90 degrees. You just go up like that. Now, remember we talked about John's labrum problems. Go ahead, step up and go. Go ahead and come back down. Now, see now he dropped his elbow down here. When you drop your elbow this low, when you go to pick it up, you're going to use the outside muscles, not the inside muscle. So you got to keep it above the elbow above the shoulder. As you come back down, it comes right to there and back down. And what this does is allows you to be free up there. So now when you want to internal rotate, that supraspinatus muscle is working, it's gliding through, it's not causing the impingement. Because the biggest problem you'll see, okay, go back down, is when this elbow comes up, this shoulder will go up with it. This shoulder is supposed to go down as this elbow goes up. This is the proper motion. When you see this happening, that's when you know you have a problem with the supraspinatus muscle.
And I have a problem.
Now you got to remember, his labrum was right across the top, where supraspinatus muscle goes right through there. So the only reason why I think he got to play is because the supraspinatus muscle, when they did the MRI, they said it was the biggest one they ever saw. So now that he's trying for the senior tour, we're going to try to get that muscle back the way it was when he was 25. All right. So now we got the supraspinatus muscle. And you see how that's across the top there. And the other ones are in the back. So the problem is, we did so much with the back of the shoulder that I see guys now pushing the ball through by using the back of their shoulder, not the front. I couldn't believe when I saw it. I said, wow, we've come a long way with that. Now, the other muscle that I've talked on how many pitchers, and I've never met one pitcher that works the tricep muscle. Not one. When I first started with John, I said, John, I want you to do a tricep kickback, see what that's like. He goes, okay. I said, okay, here's the 2-pound weight. And he goes, oh, I can do that. There's a 2-pound weight for a guy that big, so you know there's a big problem with the tricep muscle. But the thing you have to understand about the tricep muscle, and I'll show you on here, turn your back to it. Okay, we have all these elbow problems and shoulder problems. Well, the tricep muscle comes right up in here, comes all the way down, and attaches on the other side of the elbow. So it crosses both joints. Can I have the picture back up there? See, it crosses both the elbow and the shoulder. So what it is it's both an accelerator and a decelerator. When its proximity up here to the rotator cuff and the rotator cuff holds me, it becomes a decelerator up here. Down here, it's an accelerator because you're bringing your arm through and you're extending your arm. So why is it this muscle is so important? No pitchers work it. I don't know. I mean, every time I tell them, I said, they go, oh yeah, I do that. And then I tell them, they go, no, I don't do that. So I had to come up with a little bit of a program so that the trick to it is I can work like one or the other, but it's hard to work the whole thing. So I came up with a series of exercises. First ones are the tricep kickbacks. You might want to put one hand here, and you use the other side. Use your left hand. Use my work. Yeah. So what you do, you start with just start here, with your elbow up like this, and the first one is you go palm up like that. I do usually 15 reps. Then you go straight back like that. That gets the middle part. Now, the reason why it's called a tricep, because it has 3 heads and 3 muscles. So the reason why I'm doing all 3 positions of the hand is that so I can get each one of those muscles. And then you go palm down, which is the hardest one. And most guys can't even do that. Now, you can also do it, I got one of these skills bands here. You can also do it with the skills band. You can put it onto the fence. I got some pictures of that. Where's my clicker? So you can use it with that. You can just put it to the fence, and you just do palm up, palm down. Lynn University's guys do that. They have all these bands along the fence, and they go through their tricep stuff. And I'll show you some of the hip stuff we go through. Palm up, palm down. Now here's the one that crosses over both joints. Okay. This way. Okay, so what you're going to do is you come straight down to your side. You go just past, and then you curl your, straight back. You're going to go curl your wrist just like that. What this is going to do, it's going to come right down at the bottom of the elbow, and it's going to go right up through. You feel it all the way through? You'll feel it all the way through there. And when I do these with the bands, I do time and not reps. I hold 15 seconds and just do it 3 times. And believe me, the guy, after they do the tricep kickbacks and this, you got the whole tricep hit top to bottom. Now you want to turn face that way. The second one you do is just come in, curl your wrist. The reason why you curl your wrist is because that gets this part of the elbow, and this gets the inside part of the tricep and the inside part of the arm. Just like that. Good. One more time. Just like that. Okay, good. So we got the tricep taken care of, and I think the tricep's what's maybe causing a lot of the elbow problems, because that banging you get at the end of the throw, that gets eliminated with these exercises. If your elbow stays high enough, that takes the torque off your elbow. I think with the combination of those two, you'll take a lot of pressure off the elbow, and you'll get a lot more acceleration. What I do are basic fundamental stuff. We've got into a lot of, multi-joint and fun stuff and all that. The big key is if you don't have the fundamental strength, I would not go to those other exercises. I think we've missed the fundamentals. We've gone right to these other exercises, these multi-joint exercises, these fun exercises. It's caused problems. When they first started coming out with throwing the medicine ball, we had a ton of, we had a ton of rib problems because we didn't get the basic muscles right before you start doing it. So there's a definite progression when you go through all that. Okay, click. So now we're going to go to the inner thigh. Now, so we're going back to the hips and hip joint rotation. And what I was doing when we were rotating the hip, I said most people don't know that it's the inner hamstring and inner thigh that rotates your hip. And generally speaking, when I talk to most guys, I say, do you do adduction, abduction? And they go, nah, that's a girl's exercise. I said, well, if you guys did that, you wouldn't have those problems. So it's really important that you do work the inner thigh. So first thing we're going to do, where's my? We want to stretch out the inner thigh and the inner part of your hip joint. So go ahead up on your hands and knees on that, John. Face that way. So the first one I want to do is, I call this the one-legged frog. Some people think it's, you got to take this knee out. And what you want to do, this will allow you to get everything on the, like the tricep muscle across the two joints. Well, this adductor crosses over too. So you'll get everything from down in here all the way up into the hip joint. Internal rotation is this way, coming in that way. So when you have poor internal rotation, your hips, your pelvis cannot rotate through. So if you have guys having trouble getting rotating through, generally speaking, it's in the inner thigh problem. It's simple, and what you want to do is make sure you stay straight up there. Good. In one line. Good. Now, next one I do is for rotation of the hip, and we'll do this on the ground. I got a little skills foam roller. Can I have the picture back up there? Thanks. So what you want to do is you want to bend this knee, but you want to keep it straight in line with the other shoulder. You don't want it to go this way or anything. So you want to keep this straight. This is your stabilizing side, and this is, you come out here, and all you do is you push your knee down into there. And you will feel that all on the underside, and that's actually the inside part of your hip joint that you need the rotation. Sorry. And you can do the other side. So you'll see right there how far that goes down and how this one will stay straight in there, and then how it goes like that. Okay, good. He used to be able to get up off that when he was playing. There we go. All right, so off-season conditioning, inner thigh. I do the adduction machine. I do not do reps on that. I do a hold. Excuse me. I hold for 30 seconds and do 2 sets. This way, when you hold, you will actually be able to focus on the muscle. A lot of times when you do the inner and outer, the outside muscle works for the inside muscle. Not good. You want to focus on that muscle and get that right. So we use the bands, out on the field, and it's just basically just pulling in and holding, doing the same things you would with the machine. Now you have the hamstring, the inner hamstring muscle, and this is something that I used to do with actually the NFL players to get them to be faster. So this is something you want to do more with your hitters as well as your pitchers. And what you want to do is, I call this the butterfly hamstring. And if you see, you bring your knees together, you pull up with one leg, you keep one leg straight, you pull up with the other one, and you hold it. I hold it for 20 seconds, as much weight as I can hold it, and you'll feel it right on the inside of the hamstring, right in there. And you can't do reps on this because your knee is in a precarious position, so it's just, you just hold it, and it's just as hard if you hold it with as much weight as you can. Now this one, John described this one. Now this is the inner hamstring. Here we go, face the audience, face the audience. No, yeah. And what you're gonna do is basically have it back here, you're gonna pull back, and you sit down, and what this does is a couple things. One, it gets you grounded in your feet. 2, it gets this muscle in here that you don't, you see a lot of guys doing the stretch where they squat down and push out on their knees. This one strengthens that muscle. It also puts you in, as you get better, go wider and pull down and get you in your 50-50 position.
Yeah, when you're 50 too.
And that'll really help. So the guys, if you have a guy who has problem landing, if you're trying to control their foot flipping, this is the way to do that because it gets the whole muscle to react. And then I also do the hamstring outside where you're putting your knees together and come out with the band. This is a little more difficult to do with that kind of band. You kind of need a band that goes around your ankle. That's why I'm not doing it with John right now, because we'd be all over the place with that one. And that's it.
The biggest thing, like imagine, okay, genetically not everybody is able to pitch, right? You need certain genetic traits to be able to fire a baseball and throw it at a precision and certainly use your body. So we're in a, this is strictly my opinion, we're in an over-strengthening, over-developing, throw as hard as you can society right now. We're training guys to throw as hard as they can, go as fast as they can, get as strong as they can, and you know what? The injuries are just going through the roof. So it's a flawed philosophy in my opinion, but how do you find a way to train yourself in a way that's smarter, that will keep you healthier, but still be able to throw the baseball for a long period of time? Now, I told you about my background. Really, I was just a self-taught pitcher. Actually, I was a musician first. My parents were musicians. They knew nothing about baseball. So genetically, obviously, I had some gift, and that my biomechanics allowed me to be pretty flexible to throw a baseball naturally. So I grew up in Michigan, which was perfect because I only had 2 months to play baseball, it seemed like. So I didn't overuse my body when I was young playing baseball. So now imagine getting through high school and getting into the big leagues and finding out, holy cow, you know, there was no pitch limits, there's no pitch innings limits, none of that stuff. I had to quickly learn about my body. You'll be surprised how many pitchers do not know their body. They don't know where certain parts are or could feel them. Well, I have the unbelievable curse to know every single ligament and tendon, which is a blessing and a curse. So I know when things are about to happen well before than I want to know how to happen. So what Chris taught me and what Chris really prepared me for was that, A, I wasn't as flexible as I was, and how do we get stronger without bulking up, without abusing and not bypassing some of the muscles and tendons that we're going to need to get through a season. So I learned how to do high rep, low weight, different stretches and different exercises that he showed me, which built my, you know, I'm not a guy that you would look at and go, okay, he can lift 200, 300 pounds. That's not going to be the case. But there are pitchers that stand on the mound and look like they can lift, bench lift 300, 400 pounds. And good luck lasting. So what I had to learn was how to use my body in a place where it was going to maximize and take the pressure off my shoulder. I learned this about halfway through my career. And a lot of the things he's talking about now would have been, it's awesome. But the foundation that I want to stress to you real quick is that I learned how to pitch through my feet and my hips and rotating and taking the pressure off my shoulder. I don't even want to know what they're teaching at these certain camps to see how fast you can throw and weighted balls and all these different things, and throwing 98, 99 miles an hour does nothing for me if you can only last 3-4 years. I mean, the goal of every coach and every kid should be play and pitch and throw as long as you possibly can and have as great of a career as you can. So what I learned the latter part of my career is that a lot of guys overdevelop the outside parts of their legs. And as Chris says, don't deal with the inside part, the stronger part of their legs. So you see a lot of guys go around their body and you see a lot of guys fall off. That's the hard throwing, just, and they only have one way to go is fall off. I learned how to pitch inside my foot, inside my knees, all the way up through to the shoulder. So imagine if I stood up here and I started just the outside of my foot and tried to hold my leg up. I'm going to wobble, my head's going to go this way. Or if I stay inside my foot to inside my foot. That is the strongest part that allows you to rotate and go forward as a pitcher. That whole philosophy of being inside my foot, staying inside over the rubber to inside here, allows me to rotate, not on the outside, but on the inside, and that takes the whip. My arm now just whips. Imagine being able to do that with the rope, saving your arm all that energy, saving your arm all that throw, staying inside, getting here, and really finishing more inside. Now, a harder thrower guy is still going to come around a little bit more, but the more you can stay inside to the batter, the more you can accentuate this and finish inside, you're going to have better results for your right arm and your right shoulder. And that took me at least another 6-7 years of my career to where I felt like it was cheating. That, you know, my early part of my career with that W, I was throwing all upper body. I had a groin problem, and I bypass my groin problem with my upper body, and guess what happens? This bad boy gets all the grunt and the work. So the more that you can take care of your body, and the more you can be in line, as Chris is talking about, and the more you're properly doing mechanics and repeating your mechanics properly, the more successful, the more length, the more throws, the more innings, everything's going to fall in place. Athletes learn how to adapt. Big leaguers probably adapt better than anybody. That's why they're big leaguers. And they can adapt around mistakes. And eventually those mistakes are going to show themselves in the body. And so as I see the game now from a different level and broadcast games, I see all kinds of young dynamic arms. And I'm sitting there knowing those young dynamic arms aren't going to last. And it's a shame because of how they're going about it. So a lot of these things here are essential. They're tedious. Some of them are not fun, but they're essential for the longevity of keeping yourselves healthy and your team and your pitching staffs in the proper position, because this is what I'll say, and then I know we got question and answers for all of it. This is what I'll say. The bullpen is the most misused opportunity in the big leagues today more than ever. Guys don't know what they're doing in the bullpen. They're not utilizing their bullpen. There's more long-distance chucking than ever before that I witnessed. Instead of getting on that bump and you learning your craft and having some feel and touch to a catcher 60 feet away from you. That's your office. I'll never understand why, unless you have an injury and you're trying to rehab, throwing 240 feet makes no sense to me. That's just my opinion. Starts messing with your release point. When you start getting a guy going off the mound and you start training him how to master the strike zone and learn those mechanics and teach him 60 and 70% instead of 100% every single time, he's going to have a chance for growth and he's going to have a chance to improve. We lived in the dinosaur era, I guess, because I threw twice in between every start for about a 12 straight year period. Twice. Guys are barely throwing once, and when they do, it's almost like a mini game. So there's a lot of areas in this thing that I'm passionate about, and preventing arm injuries is my #1 thing. That's why I love this rope. That's why I love what Chris has taught me over the years of just 21 years of keeping my body in the best shape that I possibly can to go out and do something unnatural over and over and over again. Yes, there's a genetic gift. But you got to have a willingness to take care of the things, even when you feel good. There's going to be times where you don't feel very good. So that's just kind of a quick overall philosophy that I have, that when I see pitching and young pitching, and especially the young pitching today that is throwing way too many innings at 12, 11, 10, 9, that's got to change. So we'll do the question and answers now.
You got a mic if you want to ask a question?
When you were talking about trying to increase internal rotation of the shoulder by unlocking the hip, so if I have my team and we don't have the luxury of a trainer, are there any exercises guys can do for themselves or simple enough things that I can teach the players to help each other to unlock the hip?
That's a tough thing. It's a tough thing for people to unlock a hip. I would...
What about the...
Yeah, you want to see how he does it? Oh, that's one. Oh, yeah. Like this, you can have them come down and squeeze, like that. That'll help it. It may or may not allow your resistance in, yeah. You can also do any type of, if you do this stretch and the one-legged frog stretch, it usually unlocks it. If they're gonna unlock it, if they don't, there's probably something else going on. That's something they'll feel it? Yeah, they'll feel it. And then the other thing is, you don't necessarily have to unlock it, it just has to spin. So you can understand if there's 5 muscles like this and 1 or 2 of them are out, it's going to spin like this instead of like this. So if you can get that muscle and get it right, it'll spin right, and you won't really have to unlock it. It'll unlock it.
I've gotten to the point where I can. You would hear these pops that I mean, I'm a freak.
He's got very shallow, like his shoulder. Most people's shoulder might be like this. John's is like this, so it moves around a lot more. He has the same thing with his hips.
Okay, I actually have a question for you, John. obviously growing up in Lansing, playing high school basketball and baseball, two-sport player, looking to maybe go off to Michigan State and play both sports, and you got drafted by the Tigers. What do you say to coaches now that are looking to play, maybe the kids are playing more than a sport, this area of specialization we have today? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I personally hate it, but I know that the engine, the business engine that's out there, and all these different entities that are out there promoting year-round baseball kind of suck you in as a parent and a coach to think that you need more. Cross-training is the greatest thing that any athlete can do. I have a philosophy, it's unproven. I wish some state would let me do this, and then the guts of a parent let me do this. Give me the 10 best athletes in an area, and just let me not have them play their sport for a year. Just identify who the 10 best athletes are. We're not playing that sport for a year, maybe even 2. And I will guarantee you in 2 years that are still the 10 best athletes. There's something about athleticism that even though you can put in a factory of work and precision and 5,000 swings and 2,000 throws, there's only so far you can go. And so your body gets out of balance. I'm living proof of a shoulder that's probably an inch lower than my left. And the imbalance that happens in a one-sided sport, especially throwing, if you don't have the cross, that's what Chris is so big on, cross-training and making sure opposites work, that if you don't do other things, you're doing yourself a disservice, and your body needs rest from the same thing over and over and over again. That's why Michigan worked for me, and I think it's why I had the long career that I did. Too many people are getting burned out. Too many people are going to these showcase games. Yes, the byproduct, I think it's like what I said. The great ones are going to do it no matter what, whether they do it 5 times or 500 times. It's what are we trying to gain by putting our children in these arenas and in these facilities. I've told parents all over the time that when you add it up, the scholarship dollars you're fighting for and the draft dollars you're fighting for, you will have already paid for their college. You will have already paid for their college, and they get a scholarship by going to all these different things. Baseball is not meant to play year-round. It isn't even meant to play 162 games, and we do that, yet alone the kids that are playing 100-plus games. Is so important that I thought I would take time out of my Hall of Fame speech to talk about it, because I can't believe that this has gotten out of control, and you're actually seeing more scouts than normal looking for those athletes because they've got that mileage still left, if so to speak, rather than these prodigies. Yes, the Bryce Harpers, the Mike Trouts, it all looks good. How many of them are there? There's not that many of them. And we're trying to produce those guys left and right and make them out of a factory.
One thing, when the NFL scouts scout an NFL player, they look at the other sports they play to see how much of an athlete they are when they draft them.
Guys, question about orientation of the ball in the hand as it comes out of the glove. John, you were talking about not driving the elbow back, but you're demonstrating having the ball kind of with the Viper grip towards shortstop. If any of us were in the Adam Wasserman's demonstration earlier, a lot of guys now are talking about keeping the ball almost facing between third and home before reaching that high point. Can I get your perspective on what's the right thing to teach?
Well, for me, and I think starting at an early age, let them be natural early. I mean, it's hard to change the dynamics of a young person. Like I used to have, to give it perspective, I had a camp for 13 years, and it ranged from anywhere from 6-year-olds to 16-year-olds. And out of 300 kids, there were 3 to 5 that had a dynamic arm. Like one you go, wow, maybe 3. So the percentage is really low. But when it comes to naturally throwing a baseball, not everybody can throw the baseball the same way. There's just no possible way. But to get into the best position you can to fire a baseball is probably better for your body and your genetics, for me personally. I would never take one pitcher or take every pitcher and try to make them one pitcher. What I would do is try to see where their body is when they're throwing. If they're too far in, if their arm is dragging, I got to find a way to get their arm in position. So if they hand the ball, if the ball's coming out, like you said, or in this position, because if you watch every major league pitcher, no matter how unorthodox their motion is, and my pet peeve today is this. the condensed delivery, it's taking all athleticism away from guys. The reason guys are going to condensed delivery is because mechanically they're having trouble. They gotta shorten everything up. So when you throw a baseball, when your hand is in position and you're in position, it used to be to throw that pitch, I'm more concerned with the base and the legs and where that hand is so that when I get down here to throw, I'm not lagging and I'm not getting that elbow underneath. So I don't know if that answers your question. I just don't think there's a perfect 100% everybody throws it a certain way based on the way their body mechanics. I don't know if you have a different feeling.
Some of the reason why they do that is because I found when you go through a guy's mechanics, you have a certain limitation maybe in their muscle strength. So if there's some quirky things going on, it's probably their muscles aren't right. I don't like I figured out that there was a problem before it would actually happen. When I was a trainer in baseball, they every day after they do their side session, they would come in with a problem. So I went out to the side session and I go, what is going on out here? And here they were trying to change the mechanics in the side session, and I could see that they weren't strong enough to do that. So that's kind of the problem. So if there's some flaw in there, I look at the body and is there a weakness there that's causing that or developing that? The reason why I like the hand here is because when the body comes around, your hand's behind the ball, and you have the least amount of stress on your body when you do that. Now, I know people that do that. I think it's because they're going after their strength, which is fine if that's what they do with their strength.
I used to cup the ball. I had a miniature Jim Palmer delivery when I was in high school. So I got here and I cupped the ball, and everybody says, oh my gosh, cupping the ball, and yeah, there's some truth, you don't want, Rick Sutcliffe really cupped the ball, Kent Merker cupped the ball. So you have that, and I got out of that habit by retraining the mechanics. When I went to Detroit, they changed my whole mechanics, and not one guy pitched like the pitching coach was teaching me. I couldn't believe it, and yet I had to go through it. So when I tell guys, when people make a suggestion, it's okay to try, but if you literally can't do it, or there's something preventing you from doing it, you'll end up hurting yourself. But yes, I used to cup the ball.
Yeah, this is for both John and Chris. You addressed exercises and being loose in your lower extremities to address any shoulder problems or to prevent shoulder problems. What about the elbow? Now, John, I know you had Tommy John surgery early in 2000. So is there anything to address elbow issues?
It's interesting. Every time I see a guy come with elbow surgery, I said, what exercise do you do? They goes, well, they didn't give me exercises. They go, there really isn't any muscles of the elbow. I go, okay, that's really, really bad. So the tricep exercises are all designed for the elbow. The other thing about the elbow that causes the load on the elbow is when your elbow drops down or it's in the wrong position as you come through. So basically, when I was part of the team that developed GERD, which is the internal rotation difference between the two sides, we found that if you got the shoulder right, the shoulder was rotating right, it took the pressure off the elbow. I don't think that was totally 100%. I think we need to actually strengthen the forearm, the triceps, and that takes care of the elbow. When I work with Lynn University, most of those guys don't have any, we very rarely have a problem. If it is, it's a minor one and we can correct it. But the elbow is really a shoulder problem as far as mechanics and strength, but the tricep exercises are all designed for the elbow.
And the things that, that I learned, the old exercise used to tell you to do these and do these and do these. Well, the problem is if you get a weakness here, it'll show up here, a strength here, opposite. So my elbow situation, and everyone, always tries to figure out, we're seeing more Tommy John surgeries than ever before. I will basically say with the facts that my shoulder was part of my issues. When you pitch almost 200 innings in the postseason, that stress level is a lot greater than the 240 or 250 regular season innings. So imagine 14 straight years, basically, of postseason play and not a lot of recovery time. Not everybody goes through that. And so my Tommy John was something that basically ended up being inevitable. And for me, I never had a problem after that, basically because I'm not a max effort guy. People are trying to find out, is it the slider, is it the split finger? When you throw a pitch mechanically correct, I don't think it's any of them, but I think if you do too much of that early on, that's why you're seeing 13, 14, 15-year-olds having Tommy John. They're snapping off sliders, more than likely incorrect. When you watch the Little League World Series, those kids can't hit anything that breaks. Big leaguers can't hit many things that breaks. So if you're a little kid with a new toy and a slider and a curveball, you're going to keep throwing it. And we have an epidemic that needs to turn itself around. I don't think anyone would have a problem with over 2,300 innings having a Tommy John. Where you start having the problems is they're drafting Tommy John recipients. They're signing Tommy John recipients. How long does that last? Guys don't even have 500 innings, 300 innings, 20 innings they're having Tommy John. So everything is sped up, and we're just now finding out how long does it last for a guy that has Tommy John. Will it last him the rest of his career? We've seen the Strasburg effect. We've seen all kinds of things. So it's a great question, and I think with everything that you've heard today, along with other things, all along with the total shoulder-arm lever that works together.
One other thing with John's elbow, having a labrum tear put a lot of pressure on his elbow and it made his shoulder more unstable. And that's what I think it came out early, but he was able to, once it was taken care of, he knew he had to do what he had to do to get his shoulder right.
John, two quick ones. Do you think it's okay to start a 9-year-old on the ball with the rope, the single rope? And number two is, with the crazy high school parents these days, they all think they could buy velocity, so they got their kids doing these heavy ball programs, and just wondering about your opinion on that.
I personally hate it. I'm telling you, it's a genetic gift. If you just think, when Chris came to me and he said, I'm going to improve your flexibility, and I was already doing this and this, I'm like, no way. When I saw that evidence, by the proper mechanics and the proper flexibility will already increase your velocity a little bit. But what they're training to do these guys to do, and the mindset that exists today, is there's not a long-term good plan. These are just plans to, we're in the era of radar guns. We're in the era of 96, 95, build them up. But just look at it. Look at the length. Look at the injuries. Look at what's happening. It's not normal. If Dr. Andrews were here today, he'd say, oh my gosh, I've done more Tommy John on young kids than I care to do for the rest of my life. There's a type of body that grows with its age. Not everybody is able to handle the bulk load or the workload. I'm not a big weighted ball guy. The rope, I think, is for everybody, and that's why it's got 3 different chambers for basically for age and capability. Technique, routine, doing things correct more often are better than doing bulk and saying that you've just gotten stronger. Greg Maddux is one of the worst bodies in the history of baseball. And he's a Cy Young Award winner and one of the best pitchers ever. You know why? Because he did pitching-specific stuff. Don't kid yourself, he's a good athlete. But you're never going to see him on the beach and go, that was a great athlete. And Tom Glavine would say the same thing. So today we look at pitchers and go, holy cow, they're lifting weight like I've never seen. They look strong. It looks good. And I would be up here, wouldn't say a word if the injury rate was going like this. But pitching is at such a problem in the big leagues right now that we're only seeing the greatness of the dynamic arms and the velocity and going, wow, I got to have it. I know there's farms, there's places in Texas or wherever that you go send your kids and they come back throwing as hard as the strongest survive or whatever. I don't get it. I really don't. I don't know why we're not going backwards, but the new analytics and the new baseball world that we live in today, they seem to have all the answers to the test. And so when they find out that they were wrong in 5 years, they're going to go backwards. They're going to want pitchers to pitch 230 and 40 innings again. So my simple thing to parents is you've got time, but no one's going to tell you got time. They're going to tell you, get your son or daughter into this entity, this organization, factory, let's go, let's go. You got time. And I've seen too much evidence of what we were able to go through and do. I just don't understand how we got smarter and we got more injuries. I don't understand it. Thank you.
With the weighted ball, I had a picture. I stretched him. We went over to his physical therapy. The physical therapist did the heavy ball for the first time. I go, that didn't look good. I said, let's go back. Immediately checked him. The muscle, like I said, on the top supraspinatus was spent. And I said, you know, this situation requires a cortisone injection and knock it out. The team wouldn't do that, and it just lingered on and on. The weighted ball, the reason why I don't like it, and I'll be very specific here. When you come through this area here, where the supraspinatus is, you put a lot of load with that ball. If that load is too much for that muscle, you're going to create impingement. Impingement first starts by decreasing they're going to start to move their arm around to get it through. Then they'll start to decrease their velocity and stuff like that. And what happens is it's just a whole chain reaction that takes place. So the number of people that really can use the ball, I think, is very limited. You have to have that muscle great. You have to have great range of motion. If you have all those things, you may get away with it. But it's something where it has to be so well monitored. It's not even funny. I mean, I know exactly how to feel that muscle, but it's taken me 25 years to figure that out. So if you don't really understand that, it's not something I would take the risk doing. And that's why I came up with this exercise here, the step-up exercise, so that you can eliminate those issues.
I know you talked about the elbow, but specifically the ulnar nerve. I had a promising freshman come into my high school program, just had surgery about 3 months ago, and other than him playing year-round, are there any exercises or, even to either strengthen or stretch it out? Because I've heard more and more players that I've had, they're starting to have problems with their ulnar nerve.
Well, I know it depends on, there's two sets of surgeries. Some displace and move the ulnar nerve. I had to go back when I went into closing, and they had to go back and clean it out, and it got scarred down. But they've got I'm assuming he's had Tommy John. No.
Just the ulnar nerve.
Just the ulnar nerve. Well,
They moved it inside, underneath it.
that one's a little out of my league. I mean, the thing that, believe it or not, when I was throwing a baseball coming back from Tommy John, all the things they asked me to do, I did it to the nth degree. And I probably, because I was so old, I was 34, which is old for the Tommy John surgery, and I was looking for bonus years. I went well and beyond the days of rehabbing and making sure I did everything I could and followed their protocol. The protocol is pretty incredible. The only thing is, you need time. I was trying to race back, get back as fast as I could.
With the ulnar nerve, it's the same as it's the same area because it goes through the groove. It's the same scenario as having a Tommy John problem. There's too much load on the elbow. And it usually comes down to it's a weak tricep, and it's usually the inside tricep that's the weak part. So the tricep kickbacks with the palm up would hit that muscle in there, and doing the straight back stuff. So those exercises would clean that up.
And the problem is, if it's inflamed, it hurts more than anything you can ever imagine. There was more pain. I pitched as I was closing in the playoffs and using Darvocet to mask the pain. And one day I decided I can't take the Darvocet anymore, and I realized how much pain was in that elbow. And I thought I retore my ligament. And that nerve, when it's excruciating. So it has to calm down and not be inflamed. And in my case, they had to go back in, clean out the scar tissue. Never had an issue after that. They put it back, and I was good to go.
Any other questions out there? We got time for a couple more.
My name's Coach Mike from Rockland, New York with Breathe Baseball. You brought up Greg Maddux. I want to try and maybe pick your brain, whether it was Bobby Cox or whether it's Greg Maddux or maybe it's those inspirational people or those mentors in your baseball life. or just your life in general? Maybe some of the things they taught you, maybe it was Bobby, maybe it was Greg or somebody else.
You know, the biggest thing is, again, growing up in Michigan, I emulated anybody I saw on TV. My parents didn't really know much about sports, but I had a coach named Carl Wagner who gave me some simplistic kind of statements that I lived by. In our sport, and especially in baseball, he said, never become complacent. Once you become complacent, somebody's working 10 times harder than you and are going to pass you up. And if you're never complacent, you're always trying to improve your product. And I think that's a lot what Greg Maddux would do, is he was always looking to refine his craft, to be the best he could be and utilize the skills that work for him. Not every tool applies to everybody. Not everybody has a slider. I wanted a changeup for 20 years, and I had the best teachers in America right in my staff. I could never learn a changeup. I just couldn't do it. So I learned how to throw the best slider, curveball, and then a modified split. But for me, every day, and I tell kids this all the time, if you're afraid to fail, you're done. If you're not using failure as a motivator to get you to better, because you're going to fail a lot in this game. I used failure as the greatest motivator. It stinks. I hated it. I would yell out the window sometimes because of the way I pitched or the results. But I never let that define me, and I never let that consume me, and I never let that keep me comfortable. This is going to sound crazy, but as a starter, obviously I always wanted the ball. I always wanted to pitch in the biggest games. There's no doubt that's what I would have taken the ball over anybody. But as a closer, I had to learn a whole different set of philosophies. I had the whole different structure. And when I walked out the bullpen door, I thought about giving it up. When they said, well, why would you do that? I said, because when I walked out that door, I realized that getting 3 outs is not that easy. So I put myself on edge to say, John, you got a good chance of giving it up. Lock in. And it would lock me into that first hitter, and I never assumed or took for granted that it was a 3-run lead, 4-run lead, or 1-run lead. I was locked in. So pressure motivated me. Now, for some guys who you know are on your team that pressure might demotivate or get away, don't create any any pressure for them. Find a way for them to get outside their comfort zone. And once you get outside your comfort zone, it creates movement. Movement away from something or towards something. And I always wanted to go towards that issue. So if I had 2 straight bad starts, I'm rallying, or 1 bad start. So really, for me, everything that I did was an internal belief that I'm better than the guy at the plate, and if I'm not, I'm going to fake it. And if I've had failure or staring failure, I'm going to overcome it. And literally, that was my motto. And I used those failing times. You can't go 2-11 in the first half season and crawl in a shell and it happen and expect that it didn't happen. I had to rally in that second half and prove that I could get 1 start at a time, 1 pitch at a time. Too many times we try to create. I'm a dream-oriented, goal-oriented. We set goals and we don't reach them, and we think those are failed. I always would set realistic, just outside of realistic, unrealistic, and then unbelievably unrealistic goals. It always kept me moving towards something. I was never satisfied. Even in the campaign of winning 24 games, I realized afterwards there was something I could do better. I just played in a golf tournament that I'm thoroughly embarrassed with my putter. I finished 7th, and I took notes on what I'm going to do to accomplish those feats, what I didn't like, the way I felt over 1 shot. Not enough kids and or players take notes of when things are going good, what does that feel like, so that when it's not going good, you got something to draw back from. Because when you're going good, you hear, he was in a zone. Player was in a zone. So I don't try to be too critical, but I also am not allowing just success to be like, yeah, I'm enjoying it. I take time to remember what it's like, what it feels like, so that I can make the necessary changes. And Greg Maddux was a lot the same way. Very much a perfectionist and one of the best in the history of the game.
More specific question. I have a 10-year-old son. I coach the tournament team in the Cleveland area. And at the age of 3, my son had meningitis where he had an infection in the brachial plexus and lost function of that right arm. He has regained function, but there's no deltoid muscle. And so when you're pitching, is there anything, trying to protect my son and every other kid that I'm working with, how do you protect that when they're focused, without a deltoid, you're losing all that focus and protection of the shoulder?
What do you mean you're losing the focus? Losing the focus?
Like with no deltoid, everything, he's followed by an orthopedic surgeon and everything, but the focus of throwing is, like with the deltoid not being there, there is no
He has
deltoid.
trouble picking up his arm?
Yes, and keeping it up in that slot.
Well, the body is amazing how it substitutes muscles. So you would have to go through the same exercises that his deltoid doesn't work and see what muscles will work to substitute for that. I haven't had that situation, so I don't know exactly how it would go, but I know that the rotator, the supraspinatus muscle on the top will help take over for that. He may have to come straight down to come straight up, but he has to get the other muscles to substitute for it.
And he just may not be able to get to that position either.
Yeah.
So over here is okay. You're still on top of the ball.
Like John said, that if as long as his lower body's moving through correctly, chances are he can get away with it. He would probably throw more like darts, is what I'm assuming.
Last question. I guess the biggest thing, as we all hear, as coaches and looking to bring something away here, John, what would be your message to the coaches here today as you leave? What would be the most important thing you think to deliver to them as they can walk away and have something?
Well, I think first and foremost, I admire when you are a coach. I think it's a great responsibility. It's a great influence. You can have a great impact. It could also be a negative impact in some kids' lives, and depending on what they're looking to accomplish. I've heard and watched coaches my entire life with my kids, and I've heard every speech, and I've heard my daughters play. I watch more soccer games than any human should ever watch. And I've heard the coach say, everyone on this elite soccer team is going to play Division I soccer. And I want to stand up and go, you're lying. That's what you want them to believe, but you're lying. Not every kid has to play Division I, but there's a spot for every kid at some level. And as a coach, determining and helping that child reach his potential is the ultimate goal. If you want to win championships and chase trophies, that's one way, but you're going to sacrifice kids along the way. But if you want to develop and give the opportunity for each kid to get a little bit better, having been under your watch, and make your own disciplined decisions that don't follow the crowd, that would be a better way. Now, the institutes that are out there and the rules that are there for Little League, let's face it, Little League World Series is ruining baseball for everybody, but it's the most exciting thing that everybody wants to get to. But it's ruining it. These kids don't get any farther, it seems like. We rarely see these kids develop into great college players or even into the big leagues. So as exciting as it is to get to the Little League World Series, what are you foregoing or what are you mortgaging on these kids' behalf? Not to mention, we've had the privilege of seeing like 4 or 5 of these teams come through the locker rooms. They're brats. Most of them. Not all of them. There was one team that was, they're rock stars. Imagine, they're 12 years old. They've been on TV, they've been on ESPN, they've been interviewed. They're already big leaguers in their mind. They got the shades on backwards, they got the hat on backwards. They're already living the life. So as a coach, the greatest thing you can do is influence those kids that you have to teaching them it's not all about that, but that they got time, no matter what level you're at, even at the collegiate level. I mean, the goal is to get to the big leagues. But more importantly is making sure that each child is they're not guaranteed to play and they're not guaranteed to pitch, and it's not a right, that it is earned and that there is some process that goes with it. Look, there'd be somebody out there that can make a ton of money if you could inject in every child the will that it takes to play at the level they need to play, but it doesn't exist. Some kids have it, some kids don't. Some kids have more talent than you could ever, and they do nothing with it. And then there's the desirable kid that has the very least amount of talent that gets the most that he can out of it. I got a chance to coach basketball for 4 years while I was playing. It was the greatest thing that ever happened. I loved it. I wish I could coach today, but the philosophies today exist, I'd be fired in 5 days, so I know it ain't going to work. But at this level, teaching them life lessons and giving them the discipline that it takes to not only get to the next level, but to get to the collegiate level, so that they don't misunderstand the route that you need to take. It's not all about God-given talent, but it is about the opportunity to go and put the time in and do your work. I was self-taught. I could spend hours upon hours upon hours outside a brick wall in my own front yard, and that was good enough for me. Yes, I played travel baseball, and I played in some of the leagues that existed in Michigan, but I never played the amount of baseball that kids are talking about today. So you have a great responsibility and you have a great decision to make. And that decision is you're going to establish what your morals and ethics are, and you don't care what the league or the other teams do, but you're going to create a safe arena and do the best you can for your kids, or you're going to win at all cost. And if you win at all cost, be prepared for the fallout, especially before college. College is a little bit different, more of a business, just like the big leagues is. But you have an opportunity to impact those that are around you. And I would have never, I don't know that I would have played 21 years if it weren't for Bobby Cox. I tried to stay there for 20 years, and I did. Greatest manager in the world. Understood who I was, my personality, what made me tick. Didn't ask me to be a person like a clone. He just asked me to do 3 simple things that he asked every guy to do, in 3 simple rules. It's amazing, those 3 simple rules will wear your hat and uniform right, show up on time, and no music in the clubhouse. Those are our 3 rules. He didn't want music to influence or bother somebody, so wear your headphones. Those are 3 rules that established 14 straight years of winning and a clubhouse of continuity and never had a problem. 3 rules that could never exist today in baseball. Think about that. There's not one clubhouse that doesn't have music blaring like crazy, and a lot of crappy music. And there isn't one clubhouse that has every guy wear their uniform right. And there's probably not one clubhouse that all the guys show up on time. Those are 3 simple rules. And he basically demanded them and got them. So with saying that, you guys have a great responsibility no matter what level you're teaching and however many kids you have. But not everybody's going to be a big leaguer. And not everybody's going to be able to live out that dream, but to be able to give them the opportunity to play as much baseball as possible, that would be awesome. Whether it's 10 years old and that's it, or high school, or college, or semi-pro, or the minor leagues. It's worth every ounce of energy that you put into it. So I applaud you on that in the very beginning of what you're getting ready to kick off and do. And it is a great game. I'm worried about the game. As a broadcaster, I'm worried about the game because we're seeing about 11 pitchers a game in one big league game on average. That's a bad product. But hopefully it'll turn itself around and we'll find a way to limit the injuries. I know everybody's got everything out there. I don't get behind very many things. And this thing right here, I'm telling you, I only wish I was pitching when it came out because this is a game changer. And I just know it may be as simple as you looking at it. It's going to help arms. It's going to help the shoulder feel lighter. It's going to help the kid get in position to throw the baseball simpler. There's so many drills out there, so many different opportunities to train the body. And I know you must feel confused as a parent and or coach because there seems to be a lot more philosophies. But I know this, and it doesn't happen very often. It sure doesn't happen in the Braves organization. I'm so removed from them. I haven't had but one pitcher in the last 7 years, maybe 2 in the Atlanta Braves organization, ask me a question about pitching. I can't believe it. I picked the brains of everybody I could that were before me, that did what they did. I wanted to know how they did it. And we're in a different world, marching to a different drum. So it is what it is, and I wish you all the very best that all your teams could have success and stay healthy and experience what I got a chance to experience, the greatest life and run of baseball is a great sport. And I hope it can stay that way, because if there's a choice between baseball and football, and people are still choosing football, wow. That's something baseball's got to fix.